So this is our first event as the Prairie Partner Coalition, and we're going to keep running with that. And no matter what acronyms for funding are with us, we want to keep this network alive especially for protecting land in this region of Texas, which is rapidly urbanizing. So we really appreciate all of you being with us today. There are a few people on Zoom, and then we're recording this as well, so that Matthew's presentation and our presentation with Brian and Harvey with the Soil and Water Conservation District can be shared on prairiepartner.org with anyone who wants to learn more about our partners who have wonderful programs for landowners.
If anyone has, we always welcome feedback and how we can make these events, more broad reaching, location ideas, speaker ideas. And like Elisa mentioned earlier, especially when you are someone who hasn't worked in the space for 20 years, which I know is some people in this room, it's a great way to network and get familiar with some of the many organizations and resources that we have in the area. And we have the name Prairie Partner comes from a website that we have is a catalog of information about funding sources for prairie restoration. We have SARP on there. We also have a lot of research, and it's a tool that we like to continue to make useful to the broader prairie community. So I'm the webmaster, if you will. I always look for ways that we can show up off other people's programs around here as well.
Right. All right, so we're going to turn it over to Harvey. Harvey's going to give us the big picture on the Soil and Water Conservation District. And we're going to switch the website. Yeah. Okay.
It's okay if we.
Yes, of course.
That way I'm going to sit in a small group, and this way I can't be accused of talking down to the I have to get at least one obligatory bad joke in for that. Don't work on it. All right, so again, my name's Harvey Laas. I'm a local landowner. Straight mile distance, I said 5 miles. It's probably a little farther than that, but basically I'm just a little bit northwest of here. Property borders 359, 529, and Adams Flat Road, the great county names for a road, Adams Flat. But family's been in this county since 1896. And before that, it was a long move all the way from Belleville. So jumped across the river. So family's been in this part of Texas since 1846, Germany. Just a little bit on how deep the roots are. People talk about being a 6th generation Texan, which I am. But I am 6th generation or 5th generation on every single line of my family on both sides. Every one of my ancestors came from either what is now Germany, except for a couple of lines that came from German speaking Switzerland. So I'm about as German as you can get. But I broke the string, my wife was involved. So we farmed and ranched that entire time since I got here. And we've always been involved in the community. And one of the things is with the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, shortly after they were created, each district has a local board. I'll get into how that's organized a little more. 5 individuals that each have a zone they represent. I've been on the board 21 years. My father was on the board for 2 years. So in the board for about 80, so all but about the first 6 years. So anyway, the history of Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and what I'm going to get into, what they are, how they relate to both the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, and Texas State Board of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. We have a federal component and we have a state component. And that's what confuses a lot of people on what we do. So the districts were created under the Soil Conservation Service, which is what is now NRCS Act of 1935 during the Dust Bowl. And then in 37, President Roosevelt started promoting the standard state soil and conservation district law. So the actual local first district was organized in 1937 in North Carolina. In 1939, Texas passed the law creating the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board. The name was slightly different then, but that's what it's called now. And the first 16 districts were organized in Texas that year. There are now 216 districts. Most of the districts now are organized on county lines. One county has one soil conservation district. There are a handful that cover more than one county. This one happens to be, the name of this soil, be one of those. The name of our soil conservation district is the Navasota Soil and Water Conservation District because it covers southern 2/3 of Grimes County and all of Waller County. In this immediate area, we're the only one like that. And you know, there's 254 counties and 216 soil conservation districts. So obviously there's not that many that don't follow county boundaries, although in the early days it was somewhat different. So once the laws were passed encouraging the creation of these districts, you had to, in order to create a district, you had to have 50 landowners petition the state that they wanted soil conservation district in their area. And so they were added over time. And most of the districts now have been around at least 75 years. Because every year at our annual meeting, they give out 75-year plaques. We got ours 3 or 4 years ago. There's still some being given out. And so, how is the board? How do you get up on the board? You actually have to be elected. As I mentioned, you have 5 directors. Each district has 5 zones. To be able to serve on the board, you have to live within the confines of that soil conservation district and own land that you're somehow engaged in agriculture within the soil conservation district in the zone you represent. You don't have to live in your zone, but your operation has to be in the zone where you are. And so we have at least one board member is up for election every year. And you never have an opponent. No one wants done. We are actually elected state officials. It's a state office, quote unquote. We're extremely highly paid. About 4 years ago, they doubled our pay per meeting, $20 a meeting. And then we get mileage for attending. So, but yeah, after, 75 years of $10 a meeting, they bumped us up to 20. I mean, and I actually, for a number of years, our board voted not to even take their money because we had a bunch of board members, when they found out there was some review, somehow there was an IRS audit at the state level, and it's like, you're supposed to report that $10 a month as income, and our board voted not to take it for a number of years, but since then we've had a bunch of turnover, and we have some younger board members now, and they wanted their $20. So, and I'm chairman of our local board right now. So that's a little bit about how that works. Our job is to promote good agricultural practices. It started out what was called soil and water conservation. This was all about the Dust Bowl back in the day. And now it's, broadened out into the whole concept of regenerative agriculture, which is really the exact same stuff they were trying to promote in the 30s and 40s. And then it went away. And now all of a sudden it's become a thing again. Because everything they promoted back in those days with shelter belts and crop rotation, terraces, and everything else, all of that plays into what's going on now. And none of that's new. It's just, everything old is new again type stuff. So we serve first as a way to promote it amongst our neighbors, both programs from the state board and through NRCS. We also actually have to, for both the state board projects and for the NRCS projects, we technically sign off on every project they do. It's just a formality, but it's still that bit of local control and also forces us to keep up what's going. We also help set the priorities for our area of what gets funded. Every year we have a meeting that the public is invited to, and if we're lucky, we have 2 or 3 people show up. But between them and us, we rank the priorities for our area that we want to fund. So when projects are applied for, those are the things, because when you get into that, depending on where you are, there's a host of projects. So if you're, and now it's very interesting because we have that part of Grimes County, we actually have people where timber is a deal. So it's a priority. You get into Fort Bend County and down south, forestry is not a priority. Nobody's planting trees to sell. So that's part of how that works in terms of what we do as a local board. Further with our organization, the state is divided up into what is called, the highly technical term is 5 areas. So we're in the East Texas area, Area 5. So Harris and Waller County are the southern and westernmost counties in Area 5, because it runs from there all, Area 4, excuse me, from Area 4, and we run all the way from there all the way to the Oklahoma border. And it's really fun when I have area meetings. Centrally located means Rusk, which we have one of those a year where we elect officers and stuff. So, and further than how we're in each one of those areas, the boards at the annual meetings, well, the area meeting, they select a member for the state board that oversees Texas. So there are 5 members of that state board that are elected by the local districts, plus there's 2 members that are appointed by the governor on this 7-member board. The other odd thing about Texas State Soil and Water Conservation District Board is the state headquarters are in Temple. It's the only state agency not headquartered in Austin. It's always been in Temple. Which that gets people kind of cross-eyed too. So Ryan's going to get into the nuts and bolts of things. There is one part of the state board that we do as an organization, extremely important, that I wanted to touch base on because nobody realized it. One of the things we are responsible for is there are a host of earthen dam flood control lakes in this state that were built by NRCS back in the 50s and early 60s, which they then gave to the state board to have oversight on. When they were built, they were all in private land in rural areas. And now many of them are in the suburbs or in actual cities. And an earthen dam is not really safe when you have several thousand homes downstream from it, because some of these are pretty good sized lakes. And we have, the estimate is there is $2 billion of deferred maintenance that needs to be done on these dams to make them safe or upgrade them because of what's downstream. And in a good year, we get, in a good biennium, excuse me, we get 70, like last year, we got $75 million state to deal with all this deferred maintenance. And we have to re-educate the legislature every year because they hear they're on private land and they think it's some guy's private lake. They're way bigger than that. And he doesn't own the lake. And in some cases, people have bought land with these lakes on them and didn't even know that the state owned them, and the state board goes to inspect it, and they don't want to let them on the land until they prove you have to let us on here. One of the dams in East Texas did blow out a few years ago, and it took out a state highway. And for instance, the city of Round Rock has 5 of the dams within the city limits. Now, the closest one to here is in Madison, and it's in the city limits of Madisonville. And it's really interesting. I was there earlier this year, and it's the first one of those projects I've ever seen. The city has turned it into this beautiful park. And I mean, these are not tiny lakes. I mean, you can take a boat out, go fishing. They have that. They have nature trails, everything on it that the city has done. Sometimes the cities help with some of the stuff, but again, we own those. So that's just, and we always have to lobby legislature to please give us the money before, you know. The reality is they're not going to take it seriously until a bunch of homes get washed down stream, but or as serious as they should. So that's a general overview of what we do and all. Any questions?
Perked up when you said funding. So what is the funding available for private landowners?
Well, that's the stuff he'll get into.
Oh.
He'll talk specifically about the programs. Most of the, just in general, it's a lot of the same things that NRCS done. And what you can do, if you're smart about it and you know about it and plan ahead, is, and this is something I've done, okay. I have a problem, speaking of invasive species, with both weesach and mesquite. If you aerial spray them, you actually, to get the best results, you spray mesquite in early summer and you spray weesach in the late from August 1st to November 1st is the window for spraying it, assuming conditions are right. One of the things you can do is you get funding from one side for one and one from the other. Now you can technically within RCS, you could apply, if you do it right and apply, I just want to kill weesach this year. And then, you know, and then in the next, and then for 2 years later, do the mesquite. The best way to label it, layer it is, okay, on a particular piece of property, when you're doing brush control, you can only get funding, cost share funding from NRCS or property every 10 years. But let's say you do your spraying and you don't get, and you never get 100% kill, and in 2 to 4 years, you want to spray it. Well, you applied first to NRCS, you can apply to the state for funding to do it. So there's a way to get some additional cost share that way to layer it on, all depending on funding availability. So, any other questions?
You mentioned that your purpose was to promote good agricultural practices regenerative agriculture. How has your mission been impacted and changed with all the development that has occurred in Waller County?
Well, there's nothing we can do.
Right.
Literally. I mean, and we you know, we also, what we can do is, I mean, even if, you know, even if you're a small landowner, there you can, even if there's not funding you can apply to, you can go to NRCS for technical assistance in that. And there, even for small, there's stuff you can apply for, whether, you know, you want to do some sort of, excuse me, you know, native prairie plantings, that sort of thing. But we have no regulatory.
No, I'm certain
Right.
you don't. 'Cause if you-
All we can do is, we, Lord knows I on the soapbox with my neighbors all the time, if I think somebody might be interested in holding off or doing conservation easement, that sort of thing. I did mention we actually in 2012, we put 910 acres into conservation easements with NRCS. At that time, the easement programs was just between the landowner and the NRCS, whereas now you have the land trust involved as the NRCS funds it, but the land trust holds the easement. We did 910 acres down. We have another roughly 400 acres in the process with CPC. It looks like it's actually going to happen. But
I certainly, you didn't have any control over the development, but I'm wondering if the program, the state soil and water, are they doing anything different as we continue this great development to try to help with landowner or developers or whoever?
Not really, because we don't have regulatory authority as well. I guess my job specifically as the watershed coordinator, I try to work with all these groups that are doing conservation easements, conservation practices, restoration, just try to link people up and educate as many landowners as possible of all possibilities. So they're not selling it for development. So they're not putting in solar. They're, doing these things that are more protective of the land, because I think I live in Wharton. Wharton was probably one of the top ag counties in the state at one time. It still is near the top. And a lot of that land is changing, and it's around East Bernard, and neighborhoods popping up everywhere, and going even close to where I am. We've got a data center coming in around Bowling, and it's because the kids have no interest in the land because they saw their parents struggle.
Oh yes, I tell that story all the time.
And so it's that battle. It's like keeping it productive was too hard, or I'm not interested. I don't live here anymore.
But is there anything like if a developer buys a tract of land to put in big, like the Grange or any of these around here, do they even know you exist to help them with conservation stuff within the subdivision or whatever?
I don't think so. I've been regional watershed coordinator for 20 years, and I've worked all the way I-35 corridor, Houston area, San Antonio, all the areas that are just hotspots for development. And our biggest challenge is reaching development and make them understand, hey, you have an impact on water, whether it's water quantity, water quality, habitat, because people complain about feral hogs. Oh, there's feral hogs tearing up our yard, tearing up our golf course, you built in their habitat, not really. I'm not saying I know the feral hogs in the basement, but you built where they're at, and so, but then they can't find. We don't really have programs to address that, but we fortunately have been able to fund some things for extension to deal with it. But again, it's just.
What state agency is this under?
This is the state soil and water
So
conservation.
it's a separate agency.
Yes,
Is it managed by the agricultural?
No,
We are.
it is a standalone agency.
We're not very big. We have about 80 people statewide.
They only report to the governor and the legislature.
Okay.
So, but that's kind of what it is. And
Okay.
when you start talking about, once you start having true environmental, the type of environmental concerns where wastewater leakage and all, then it becomes a CCQ issue. There are things, again, working with individual landowners, not developers so much, that state board can do. He's gonna talk about, if you get help from them, you have to do a water quality management plan. And that's so if you've got agriculture operations that are creating runoff either from fertilizer or you've got too much livestock in a confined area. This is to keep people from doing those kinds of things. Because if you have the plan, it shows them, and if they're not compliant or they're creating a problem, they can lose funding. And so the other big piece that falls into that under their purview is the one place where they do have a fair amount of regulatory authority is the big chicken farms. And so a lot of the stuff that they do falls under the purview of the state board. And so they help fund, one of the things they do is they help fund incinerators to dispose of dead birds so that they're not burying them and dumping them, that sort of thing. And we actually have a few in our district in Grimes County. That's how different our district is. Down here in the south, you know, historically we were cows, rice, and other grains before now we're rooftops and concrete, but that's another story. Whereas Grimes County and timber and the chickens is the more recent thing. So in our small little district, the amount of agricultural diversity is pretty amazing, although it's very.
Well, before Harvey finishes though, he mentioned that he put some of his land under conservation easement as some endings. At the end of it, with the Conservancy, they will have 1,300 acres, more than 1,300 acres of their land. So he really is kind of a shining example of somebody who cares enough about the land and about the history that they, had over many, many years. So it's pretty wonderful that he's doing it. And thank you.
And I did leave out the fact that in addition to land in Waller County, we own 140 acres in Powell County, north of San Antonio. It's also
Okay.